Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Inside episode of Beyond the Tech. My name is Neda Maria Kaisumi, your host, and today we have a special guest with us who is distinguished business leader, author, and veteran with a career spanning over several decades. We welcome Mr. Adam Coffey. Adam's journey began at 17 when he enlisted in the U.S. Army, serving from 1982 to 1986 as journeyman engineering, responsible for repairing advanced air defense system. This experience instilled in him a strong foundation of discipline, leadership, and technical expertise. Following his military service, Adam transitioned into the corporate sector, joining General Electrical Healthcare Division in 1991. Over a 10-year tenure, he advanced from engineering group leader to an executive role, gaining invaluable insight into business operation and leadership. In 2001, Adam embarked on a remarkable 21-year journey as the CEO of the three national private equity-backed service companies, collaborating with 9 different private equity sponsors. During this period, he successfully executed 58 acquisitions and facilitated exit totaling billions of dollars, averaging a 5 times multiple on invested capital. Beyond his executive roles, Adam is a prolific author with 3 Amazon's #1 bestseller, The Private Equity Playbook from 2019, The Exit Strategy Playbook from 2021, and Empire Builder, The Road to Billions from 2023. These works offer deep insights into private equity business growth, strategy, and successful exit planning. In 2021, he founded the Chairman Group, a counseling firm dedicated to sharing his extensive expertise with CEOs and private equity portfolio companies, founders, and entrepreneurs. Adam is also a respected mentor to MBA candidates and sought after speaker at top business schools, influencing the next generation of business leaders. Mr. Coffey, thank you so much for your time and being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Hello to all your listeners out there. That was quite the introduction, very detailed, but happy to be here.
Thank you. It was just worth to mention that. Let's just start by asking, how did your experience in the U.S. Army shape your approach to leadership and discipline in the corporate world?
Well, I think, all of us, our lives are a set of experiences that we build upon, as we get older. And I'm certainly qualified for older now, having recently turned 60. So if you take the young version of me, I started at the bottom. Out of high school, I enlisted in the service. I'm a private E1. I'm the lowest form of life on the totem pole there is. I look up, I see bubble gum on the bottom of somebody else's shoe. And so if I think about my career, I started at the bottom. I literally climbed the corporate ladder, all the way up to the top to CEO. And so the military provided me with a base level platform, discipline, teamwork, leadership. Taught me how to function as part of a group, taught me how to think about solving for obstacles. Failure is not an option. The mission must be completed kind of thing. And so a great experience. And I tell people, had I not been in the service then, I'm not here talking to you as a former CEO, as a best-selling author, as a guy who's had billions of dollars in exits. None of that is possible without that foundation, in the service, learning about basic skills like teamwork, leadership, discipline.
That's so fascinating. Structured leadership and training. I really like it. Speaking of transition, you moved from engineering roles at General Electric into executive leadership. What motivated that shift and how did you navigate it?
I was hitting the glass ceiling. So as an engineer, this is in the mid 1980s, I'm earning 6 figures, as a young engineer. And I kind of was maxing out the potential of an engineer in terms of compensation, salary, and what have you. And so moving over, out from the glass ceiling of where engineers were and moving over to leadership, a much higher potential. But I had to then learn how to compete with people like you who have the Harvard education, born, with call it a very high level of potential or capability. And so, and I always told myself, look, I'm a scrapper. I will work harder. I'll be up later. I'll be up, earlier, and I will outwork, outlast, out hustle, call it the competition. So it was a little scary, to be honest, to be such a good engineer and put away my technical skills and now compete as a business leader, without that security blanket of being, a great engineer. But I ultimately decided that I could always fall back, on being an engineer, if the management thing just didn't work out. But, I was fortunate. I was at GE during, I call it the Camelot era. It's tech doesn't exist yet. GE's number one on the Fortune 500 list. Company's growing so fast, it's doubling in size every 3 years. Jack Welch is at the helm. He's the world's most admired CEO. I'm in the world's largest company, and I'm climbing the corporate ladder during their heyday. And so for me, what a great experience to learn how to run a business, in that kind of environment, which is what ultimately set me up for a career as a CEO.
It's very interesting. I really admire your curiosity and courage because these two, I think, are the main elements.
Well, I think
And
I think for all entrepreneurs out there, we have to take calculated risks. We can't be, risk averse and find success, at a high level. We have to, at some level, trust intuition, trust in our skills, and we have to work hard. And if we lack something, whether it's education or it's something else in our backgrounds, then we just have to work that much harder to try to overcome those obstacles or solve for them. But we have to try. In life, there's dreamers and doers, and at the end of the day, dreamers don't get anywhere. You have to be a doer.
exactly. Thank you so much for the nice advice. Having led multiple private equity backed service companies, what key lessons have you learned about driving growth and achieving successful exits?
So I think, first of all, it starts with, if we're running a business, if we're growing a business, if we're starting a business, we have to start with some kind of a destination in mind, a timeline, a specific journey that we're going to tackle. I'm a pilot, and you can't take off if you don't know where you're going. And then as a pilot, you learn how to deconstruct the journey that's ahead of you. And I think for entrepreneurs, too many people, whether it's a startup or even if we're navigating a career, we don't really have a destination in mind. And when we don't know where we're going, we don't know when we are on the right path or when we've wandered off the path. So I would say that, learning how to deconstruct a trip and do strategic planning, being a meticulous planner, something I learned about, as an engineer for sure. And then building that trip and realizing that, okay, I can't go from startup to exit, in one fell swoop. There's going to be a lot of interim destinations along the way. I have to plan for revenue, for the growth in revenue, in earnings, for efficiencies, how I'm going to tackle, culture and people related issues. And so it's like, you find that success is not hard to achieve if we break it down into bite-sized pieces and create something that is navigable, and we can create, bites. Can I win a week? And if I can win multiple weeks, am I winning the month? And if I'm winning months, I'm winning a quarter. And if I'm winning quarters, I can win a year. And before you know it, it's like I'm taking what seemed like an impossible journey, and I'm now accomplishing that goal or that task. And so a lot of, different tools that I've learned over the years, on how to grow businesses and repair them. But ultimately, it starts with sound planning.
That's a great perspective with the strategic timing planning. I like that very much. Well, let's talk about technology. How do you see AI and digital transformation influencing the strategies for scaling business today?
It's amazing to me how fast the world of technology is changing the business world. And we're only scratching the very early surfaces of what I think will be phenomenal change over the next couple of decades. And I don't have to look any farther than my own life. If I go back to my days at GE, there was no computer on my desk. I had no voicemail. There were no cell phones. And so I think about how far the business world has come in just my own career. And the pace of change is accelerating for multiple reasons. One is we're just technologically getting so much more advanced as human beings, but then social media and other platforms have kind of shrunk the world, and connected larger groups of people that normally wouldn't have an ability to interact on a regular basis. And so you add these advances in technology, and I think the next 30, 40 years, if someone from today were to look 30, 40 years out, they wouldn't recognize the future. And so AI is just literally changing the world, but we're all cave people living in caves right now in terms of how early on in this process we are. So I think the potential of AI is huge. We're seeing some early, adaptations of it that are proving useful, but we, still a lot to learn, and still a lot of technological advances ahead. And I think the next 10 years will be very transformative. And so, if you're in, I'm 60, I'm almost going to miss the fact that I'm not going to be running companies and doing the things that I do when this world, really takes hold. But I think for the younger generations that are out there, the world that you have today is just going to be entirely replaced by a world that we have not yet totally fully imagined. And so the way I look at AI today, I think about all jobs and all people. There is high value work and there's low value work. And the purpose and focus of AI today isn't necessarily to replace human beings. It's to automate and create a path where we can take that low value work and get it done far more efficiently and faster, through the use of AI and other emerging technologies, so that human beings can focus more on high value work. However, that's defined by job. And so all people, whether you're a janitor or a CEO, there's things we do that are low value. They need to get done. But there's things that if we could spend more time doing them, we would accomplish more. And so that's the high value work. And so I see AI today, early stages, is helping be an outlet for low value work, for eliminating low value work. And I think about just my world, the world of private equity. What's the activity? We have an army of analysts who are looking at hundreds of investment circulars. Imagine a day where I could feed a PDF into an AI engine, where that AI engine could look at 300 or 400 different companies in a matter of seconds or minutes, and then highlight which companies that my firm ought to take a closer look at based on what it's learned about our firm and our investment, profile and our thesis of the kinds of companies that we like to invest in. There's so much manual, time consuming work that's going on in the world today of investing in private equity. And to get all of this analysis done, in an automated fashion would surely focus us. And I think early adopters, we need to be experimentative, and be not afraid to experiment and try new things, especially with the world of AI. Early adopters, I think, as the technology matures and improves, early adopters will take a lead, a statistical significant lead in the performance of their companies versus their competitors in a similar industry where they have been lagging on the adoption of technologies.
Exactly. And I think personally that, as you say, AI is becoming a necessity for businesses and not luxury anymore. And that's great, an example that you shared, that how data-driven strategies can actually create a real competitive edge. It's amazing to see how businesses can transform when they harness the right insights from the data. Now, looking at the bigger picture, how do you see AI transforming traditional service industries, and what steps should companies take to adapt?
So I think again, early strategies and adaptation. We're in the caveman period. It's like there are some technologies that are out there that are proving useful. I think every human being on the planet now has played with Chat GPT at some level. And I'm a writer, and so I've played with it too. And then ultimately, I went back to my own voice, and I decided that the Chat GPT voice just wasn't a replacement for my own, my own intellect, my own style. It'll get there eventually for sure. But when I think about specific technologies, again, it's like I can't point to. Some industries are more mature than others. Some are seeing more significant gains faster than others. But I think ultimately, really, it just comes down to experimentation. We have to be willing to rethink the way that our companies are structured. We can't be rigid in thinking. We have to be open to trying. And for me, it just starts with high level evaluations. And I think about the volume of work. Pick any industry. If I'm a service, a business, the last company I ran, if I have 1,900 service trucks on the road, I think about those technicians and my largest group of employees. What does my company do the most of? Well, I do service calls. We do 1 million service calls a year. Well, if I could find a way to use AI to make a service call 5% more efficient, times 1 million service calls, times 1,900 employees, imagine the productivity gains that I could see, and realize. And so I might be using AI to help fill out work orders, to automate work orders, to help with inventory planning, with which parts should I stock on which trucks, and potentially even knowledge transfer. So a new apprentice technician going to work on a piece of equipment for the first time, but can leverage a database of 1 million service calls having been performed and all the knowledge contained by more advanced level technicians who could then help them troubleshoot, and help them, with an AI type tool, hey, based on the error codes that the machine is giving and 1 million service calls in the database, there's an 89%, probability that this particular part has failed. It's in bin B3 on your truck. Bring it in with you when you get there. And it's like, I've never seen this piece of equipment. My AI companion now tells me, the scary thing for a technician out there is, how do I take it apart? How do I get in? And so the AI tool now walks me through, well, here's where the screws are and the latches are, and remove these and turn off this and open this panel. And now you see this. And you think about just in life, how we use YouTube today. Almost nobody does anything, for the first time without having gone to YouTube and said, show me a video of doing this, and so using AI to leverage a knowledge base, that we're building to help us automate those low value tasks. So, right now today, I can't replace the technician. AI can replace some, I'll call it back office potential jobs, that are out there. But right now, AI in a computer can't fix my HVAC or my plumbing system or wire a house. I need human beings to do that. I do anticipate, we've seen, the robots walking around and the robot dogs and Elon Musk's little army of walking robots. I think there comes a time when, we have that type of a labor pool who potentially is out there, but we're a long way off from that. So today, crawl, walk, run, right now it's early adaptation on human knowledge and trying to impart wisdom to people who need the wisdom from a group of people who already have it, that we've downloaded their information and built a database. It's interesting just to talk about the infrastructure. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning, commission for my town. And when people are thinking or talking about doing data centers and the power requirements and the computing power that's required for AI, and the recent Chinese company that came out with a much faster version, lower computing requirements, etc. It's like we are so in the infancy stages. It's going to be a fun journey to see how this evolves. But today it's augmenting human capability. It's not necessarily replacing.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Let's go beyond business because AI is also being leveraged to tackle some of society's biggest challenges. Like my colleagues and I, we're trying to use AI-driven solutions to help prevent the school shooting, or at least reduce it. Given that gravity of the issue, I'd love to hear your thoughts on using AI for such critical social challenges. And in your opinion, how can we raise public and private sector interest to invest in such an important topic?
So when I think of AI and I think of technology in general, and just in my own brain applying it to the situation that you just brought up, which God forbid is this shootings and school shootings, you know, trying to identify root cause without having to get into that, into the why, just talking about the how do we prevent, and I think about in my daughter's school where we have uniformed police officers, and I'm a part of that security. I'm a volunteer, and so we have a group of dads, and we have police officers, and so when I think of AI, I think about, so in most cases, I think there's a high percentage where these shootings are initiated by people who have some connection to that school. Being able to profile and or just try to understand, the psyche or the human element, of is there a pattern, to the escalation, someone who, and I, without trying to get into, I'm not an expert in the space, but just, what can we learn about grades, about social interaction, about instances where students have had issues or problems with authority or problems with the school leadership. It's like, is there a way to use AI to identify who potential high risk candidates might be? Is there an ability for us from a security perspective to use AI to lock down schools and or create a more secure environment, or to recognize who's authorized to be in a certain place and provide them access? I mean, it's so, AI in and of itself, again, augments other technologies that already exist. So AI by itself doesn't eliminate, but AI may used with cameras and door security may say, hey, this is a mom. I know this is a mom. It's a mom from the database, then, and her parent is in 5th grade, and you know what? And she's not carrying, she's not armed, and it's like, I could use AI to control the access to the building. I could use AI to lock down doors in an event. I could use AI to notify security. We talked about robots earlier. There could be these, robot dogs, or whatever the case may be. It's like there are so many ways that AI could be used to be helpful. And if I think of some of these shootings, again, it's in a lot of cases, it's someone who had a relationship with the school, former student, potential disciplinary problems or societal outcast, type tendencies. Whatever this case is, I think there's an AI database and a way to use to help us try to identify who the potential people might be ahead of time, again, to provide security, physical security to the buildings, to provide notifications in the event that something happens. So many ways to tie AI to different existing technologies to try to augment and help prevent that. But again, I think ultimately there's probably a deeper issue at play. What led someone to this place? What we're talking about now is responding to the person who's in the place, but how do we prevent the person from getting there?
Exactly. And that's why we want to use the data analytics and AI to study this pattern and try to prevent it before people enter to, for example, a school building, they can be identified. Well, Adam, this has been incredibly insightful conversation, and your experience in leadership, private equity, and now the evolving role of AI provides so much value and inspiration. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and perspective with us today. I truly appreciate your time, and I'm sure our listeners will walk away with a lot to think about. Looking forward to seeing how your journey continues to unfold. Thank you so much, Adam.
Well, thank you for having me here, and good luck to all your listeners out there.
Thank you.